Hi everyone, it's great to be back at BioFarm. First of all, I just want to thank Sean and Otts for another fantastic week. For those who don't know, we are DANÚ Farming Group. We're an EIP project funded through the European Union and the Department of Agriculture. We're coming towards the end of year 3 of a 5-year project, and our talk is going to be about what we've learned to date. So we have 12 farms involved in the project, and on each farm they've got these 4 plots. Plot 1 is a control with Agricultural Green Book guidelines and recommendations, and then in plot 2 we all artificial fertilizer buffered with a carbon source, be it sugar, molasses or humics. In plot 3 it's the same, but we're looking at mineral balancing in this plot, and in plot 4 it's mineral balancing plus biology. This year we put a big emphasis on sap analysis, and we sent off loads of samples to Nova Crop in Holland. We hope that SAP analysis will help us to anticipate potential problems and respond quickly to any nutrient imbalances we saw. This came through fore when we were looking at Andrew Bergen's winter oats. You could see this purple hue across a lot of leaves, and Andrew said the typical advice would be put out some manganese. So we decided to send off the leaves for analysis. When we got the results back, we could clearly see the manganese was in excess. Instead of being between 2.6 and 6.9, it was 12.45. We rang Andrew straight away and told him this, and it was just as well because he was just about to apply some manganese to his crop. We then looked at our soil results to see if there's any correlation between what we're seeing in the plant and what we're seeing in the soil. When we looked at Andrew's manganese, we could see the ideal rate is between 30 and 100, whereas Andrew's rate was 323. So this excess in the soil was clearly showing up as an excess in the plant. So we decided to put all our results onto one page. So we have our soil results and sap results. We brought in our base cation saturation rates and our indexes from our soil tests, and then we had our sap analysis results here. And we also recorded our growth stage. So we're tillering here on the 3rd of March, and then our average temperature, air temperature, high and a low. We can see here on the 3rd of March, Andrew's K levels were below optimum. So on the 19th of March, Andrew decided to add 200 kgs of 10-10-20 to all 4 plots. This brought the K value up into optimum, but this didn't hold true for everything. We can see here when we look at our magnesium, we can see here on the 3rd of March that nearly everything is below optimum except for plot 3, which just about sneaks into optimum. So Andrew then on the 19th of March decided to add 3 kgs of Epsom salts to the plots, except just for plots 3 and 4, and actually the results went backwards, which is a big head scratcher. But when we look then up here, we can see we're still getting air temperatures down below 1.4 at night time. So that was made it kind of interesting to see what was going on there as we went along. Andrew then on the 29th of April added another 5 kgs of Epsom salts, and you can see again we're still not getting our magnesium into our crop, which we're struggling to do. And again, which is again significantly, you can see our air temperature is now down to -3 at night. We're getting colder. So this is between the 7th of April and 10th of May. Our average air temperature at night time was getting down to, our lowest air temperature, we were getting that nights down to -3. Then we come along and Andrew comes with another 9 kgs of Epsom salts on the 19th of May. And we test again then on the 25th of May. And we can see now finally we're in optimum level for magnesium. But we can also see that the magnesium has got into optimal level for plots 2 and almost into optimal level for plot 1, despite actually having no Epsom salts put on throughout the whole period. But what is significant is when you look at our low temperature now, our low temperature between the 10th of May and the 25th of May is 2.5, and that's a big jump from -3 to 2.5. So we've seen this time and time again where we've put stuff out and not seeing any response, and then we've seen sometimes when we've put them outside and getting a good response, and then we've seen where weather seems to have a big impact as well. So there's a lot of early stage in trying to figure out how this all works together. But we've invested now in weather stations for all our farms, so we can track more accurately what the impact the weather is having on all our sap analysis and all our results. The weather has a big impact on our trials. We could see this firsthand on Johnny Green's winter oats back on the 8th of May 2020. We saw this kind of white mist coming across on the trial plots. I asked Johnny what was this, and he thought it was the first sign of drought showing up in his field. By the 21st of May, these areas had become more and more pronounced, and by the 18th of June, these lighter areas had significantly browned up. But typical Ireland, we end up having a lash of rain, so by the 10th of July, all these browner areas had now greened up due to secondary growth, which made a really interesting time when it came to harvest for Johnny. So it's not just weather that has a big impact on our crops, but also soil type. We can see here this light area will never grow the same amount of crop as this heavier soil area, and this correlates with our yield maps back from 2015. All these lighter areas are areas where we got lower yield. So when this comes into our trial plots, you can see plot 1, plot 2, plot 3, and plot 4. Plot 3 is always going to yield more because it's got a better vein of soil running through the entire plot. So essentially our plots will never stand up to the rigors of science, but we're not looking at reduction of science, we're looking at a systems approach here that's looking at trying to improve the vitality of all the plots across the board. This is an excerpt from the DANÚ project proposal back in September 2017, where we said, as the positive results occur, expectations is that similar practices will be carried out on the rest of the farm areas. Farmers in general are understandably risk averse and will be slow to invest in a process if they are not sure of positive results. If towards the end of the project, the principles and practices learned are applied to all the farmed land areas, this will be a key indicator of the project's success. In a sense, it is a key performance indicator. We are delighted to say all 12 DANÚ farmers are now applying biological farming principles to all their farmed lands. On the livestock farms, there has been a reduction of artificial nitrogen usage by an average of 35%, with no reduction in output. On the tillage farms, there has been a reduction of artificial nitrogen usage by 10 to 15%, with no reduction in output. Insecticides have been reduced to a minimum of 50%, and in most cases by 100%. Fungicide has been reduced by 30 to 50%. Herbicides have been reduced by 30 to 40%. Instead of me waffling about data, we thought it would be best if you actually listen to the 12 farmers and what DANÚ has meant for them and how they have transitioned their farms towards biological farming.
DANÚ came along at a really good time for me in my journey to biological farming, because I was maybe 3 or 4 years into it and getting to really like what I was seeing and getting interested in it, but didn't really know how to progress it, and I was making it up as I went along, and I probably still am, but I'm making it up as I go along now with 11 other farmers and a gang of really good advisors and people monitoring what's going on. And apart from the technical information, that community is great. There's mutual support, you know, we have each other's backs. I don't feel like the only tall poppy. I know 11 other tall poppies who are doing things at least as ridiculous as what I am and seem to be getting on fine with it. And that's maybe a little bit facetious, but it's an important thing too, that you feel you have some support when you do something fairly radical. And in lots of ways this is not radical, but compared to what we were doing before, which was very predictable and safe, it is. But on the other hand, there wasn't a whole lot to be got out of it, or I didn't think there was anyway. I thought my ground was getting worn out and my margins were getting worn out, and they say profit is the reward for risk taken, and we're making at least as much profit as we did before. So that's the bottom line. The farm is staying going. Now the farm is improving and the soils are improving.
DANÚ has been a learning curve for me. It's been a thing of a lot of challenges, and one of the biggest challenges was for me to realise that the buck stops with me. It's not about blaming someone else. I have to take the responsibility. I have to apply the recommendations that I have come up with for the plots, and by doing that, that has given me responsibility. And it's from over the last couple of years being part of DANÚ, I have then migrated that out into the rest of the farm, where some of the practices that I've been doing on the plots that have seen positive results, I've started to use them on the rest of the farm.
Discipline at DANÚ is great overall, even if in practical terms it's not great on a busy day when you have to go out and do 5 different treatments in a field instead of 1. but it does make you look at what's happening and why it's happening, and it rarely comes up with very clear answers, but maybe it's more the questions that it stimulates than the answers that it provides that's useful, and having the discussion with the other farms and seeing how other guys are responding. It's like having an almost infinite number of trials on your own farm, because you're comparing the data from one farm to another.
So 4 kind of key principles that we're following here for conservation agriculture on the farm are soil armour, living roots, minimal soil disturbance, and crop rotations. The cover crops here are probably the biggest linchpin in that they're keeping ground open all the time, they're pumping down root exudates into the ground, they're mopping up excess nutrients that otherwise would flow away, and they're binding soil particles that would be broken up when you're tilling. So they're the biggest part to play in the whole system of conservation agriculture.
Norman's phone hasn't stopped ringing since he and his dad Michael won the Farming for Nature award back at the end of October. A lot of people are ringing up to congratulate them, but also wondering what is the silver bullet. And as we know in DANÚ, there is no such thing as a silver bullet, but where do you start?
One of the first things I'd say is you have to work out why you're doing something and to fit it into your personal context and your personal scenario, whether it's your work-life balance, whether it's your family, whether it's your farm setup, or whether it's trying to change the way you farm. And the second thing that I found with you is you have to leave space for that, create the space for that, so that you allow yourself a platform in which you can experiment and succeed and give time to see results and give space to see results. Because if you're trying to transition a new system within a current system and suddenly everything doesn't fit like a smooth flowing jigsaw or a smooth flowing machine, that certainly can be very disruptive and cause a lot of hassle. So in essence, I would say you have to lay aside a field or a little section of your farm, or maybe an outside little field or something different, and start trying something different where you're looking at ideas that you think might work.
Find something that's a fit for you, and it really sparks your interest. When I was conventional, I suppose I was enjoying the farming, but I wasn't completely invested in choosing my own path. I was probably taking advice from others, whereas now I feel I'm probably the person that knows best about what happens on my farm, whereas before I was looking for someone else to tell me what to do. Now I'm very clear about what I want, and I don't really look. I look for information from the outside, but it's information to inform my own decision.
Going cold turkey or turning off a tap in one place, you could suffer. So it's, you have to start the day before, possibly the year before the seed goes in the ground by improving fertility, balancing your soils. In some farms, getting the drainage right. In other farms, building organic matter, or most farms building organic matter, getting your humus levels right in your soil.
It's not about a drill. Farmers tend to think it's about buying a certain machine, but it's not. It's a complete system change. It's a change in a way of farming and a way of thinking. It's not prescriptive. You have to get a feel for what you're doing. You have to get a feel for your land, feel for your soil, work with your gut a lot more. You have to be able to adapt and change if weather or conditions go against you.
And by focusing on the soil health, grow healthier crops. So instead of worrying about trying to solve problems, try not to have them happen.
When you are in a transition, is not to take it personally, in that it's not me that's not working. I actually say in my situation, I am actually doing the very best I can. Sure, the result mightn't be what I expected or mightn't impress the neighbours, so maybe don't do it in the field beside the road if you're worried about that. But the result is the result. A bad result is the same as a good result. It is a result, and then you have something to work from. Whereas if you take it too personally, you can become too attached to it, and it can jeopardise the whole project.
That doing nothing is often the best thing to do, but it's also the hardest thing to do. nature knows a lot better, and we have to try and start working with nature. So before I go out, say to kill a weed, for example, in a crop, I stop and think and say, well, is it actually doing any harm? Will it interfere with my harvest? Nature put it there for a reason, so at least stop and think.
I thought this was going to happen overnight. A year or so, the farm would, or the plots would transform, but it's taken a lot, and it's the subtle little things that you start to see. There's more mushrooms, which would indicate a fungal increase within the soil, and then, as I saw, the dung beetle has come.
I see a huge difference in wildlife and general life around the farm. It's changed a huge lot, and I'm hoping to see more of it. Worm numbers are up overall on the farm. I see birds following my drill, which I haven't seen for a long time. The farm is coming to life, I feel, and I hope that I believe in something better for the next generation.
First Albrecht soil sample, we did 2 on grass and 2 on tillage, and like it was just like a light switch came on. The soils were, especially in the tillage, were totally out of balance, but the grassland wasn't great either. Like we were looking at 80% calcium, 8% on the grass, and that would have been our best. And the tillage was 92% calcium, 3% magnesium. So like we were really on the road to nowhere unless we got that balanced. So especially on the grassland, I started putting keys right out, putting slurry out, and about 4 years after that then I got more soil samples done, and I did one of the originals, and I was amazed how it had balanced itself out. It was 68 calcium, 14% magnesium, and it was growing a hell of a lot more grass with the same inputs than what I had been. So that sort of opened my eyes that if we don't get the soil biology right, we're on the road to nowhere.
Pretty easy step is to treat your slurry and make it a more soil friendly product. Also means less agitation.
If the slurry goes out, the grass doesn't get an application of nitrogen for at least 6 weeks after that. And there seems to be, as well, what I've noticed is, even though the content of the slurry, we know the content, the nitrogen content of the slurry, but it seems to be working an awful lot better, and the growth doesn't seem to reflect the content. In other words, we seem to be getting more growth for the amount of nitrogen that's in the slurry, which means maybe it's way more efficient than artificial nitrogen. I don't know, but that's what I'm observing anyway.
The biggest change we've made in our farm from a biological point of view has been moving from converting our farm manure into compost. Applying compost, to me, masks over a lot of the problems that we may have when we are moving to a biological system and trying to reduce our nitrogen rates. It provides a soil body, and it provides a very slow release on the needed nutrients, which facilitates the changeover. Coupled with, we went down the road of doing all Albrecht samples on the farm, so this gives us a greater idea of where our cations are, our anions are, and where our major micronutrients should be, and try and balance them and try and balance the ratios. So with this in mind, we've converted from using granular fertilizer to using liquid fertilizer. We've either gone down the road of a soil-based liquid fertilizer or foliar-based nitrogen and micronutrients.
Gone over all liquid now on my grazing platform. I haven't put a bag of granular out in the last year and a half, and I'm noticing that I'm getting a fantastic response. Like before with the granular, I would have been putting out 170, 180 units on my grazing platform. Now I'm down to give or take about 125, 130 units, and I've grown as much, if not more, grass.
When I first started DANÚ, the advisors, I myself sat down and they suggested going down to 6 units an application on plot 3 and 4. Looking back, it was probably a little bit too low to start with. You have to kind of wean the grass off nitrogen. I thought they were crazy, to be honest, but after After the second year, 6 units was more than enough. Obviously, with the mineral balancing as well, but they grew as well as any other fields I have here.
This year, we just focused totally on the amount of grass that we needed, whereas before, the whole thing was just putting out nitrogen to grow more grass. And if we had more grass, we baled it and we put it into the silage pit, even though we may not have needed it. This year, we knew after the first cut that we had adequate silage for the entire winter. So there was a decision taken then to cut back grass growth and to ensure that we were only growing enough for grazing and what the animals required.
The silage ground this year, it would have got 2,000 gallons of slurry. It would have got half a bag of sulphate of ammonia, and it would have got, I split the nitrogen into 18 units as a foliar for the first application. Then I took plant sap analysis. They were sent to Nova Crop in Holland, and then we just checked out what we were short on. So that would have gone into the second 18 units. And I actually had, even though silage was cut a week or two later because of the cold spring, I had as much as I have ever had.
We started sap analysing in the last couple of years, and we're using this to try and determine what actual nutrients are getting into the plants. So we'll try and take a sap analysis before we apply our foliar feed, and then again, ideally, we'll try and take it a couple of weeks later to see have we got an influence on our foliar feed. We can then join up our sap analysis with our forage analysis if we're doing silage, and we can take it right through to what's been fed to the animals indoors during the winter. It's imperative, I find, or I think anyway, to try and get a mineralised silage. We have to get beyond just looking at the DMDs of silage. We have to really look at the full mineral profile of them.
Spring was a very cold spring, and a lot of nitrogen went out on farms around the country, which was kind of wasted. So myself, I used half a bag of sulphate of ammonia. So the analysis is 21 nitrogen, 24 sulphur. So the sulphur basically warms up the soil in the spring. So that was kind of the first round. And to be honest, it was so cold all spring, it mightn't have got anything till maybe April, because it was just the limiting factor wasn't the nitrogen in the soil, it was the temperature and the lack of sunlight.
I definitely think I can get down to 100 units of nitrogen and grow every bit as much grass. And another thing I've noticed as well is I had no problems really with milk urea this year. Rarely went over 25, and the lads I was talking to were up to 50, and I was just shocked with that. So I suppose my attitude is little and often. No use poisoning it with one application.
After the success of what I've seen from plot 3 and 4, I decided to cut back my nitrogen on all the remaining paddocks. So I've been melting down my own urea and using it as a foliar at about 12 units per acre. So in the future, I'd like to keep that down. I'd like to actually keep that down at 12, or even possibly go lower. In conjunction with the multi-species, just to cut right back on nitrogen. Now the multi-species could be a problem with persistency, but sure, we're just going to have to learn as we go along.
Realising that it's bottom up, not top down. I used to go out in fields and look at the crops, and you'd be looking at what was growing or what diseases you had. You'd be going, oh, what can I do with this? You go to the agronomist, he'd tell you to put on this or that. You grow your crop and spend your money. You'd harvest, you'd have to go pay your bills at the end of the year. Whereas now I try to start off with a bottom-up approach. Spreading nutrients in the autumn on the fields, and then spring cropping is something I'm at the moment. So I feel that if I spread my fertility, my muck, forward manure in the autumn, it's stable then come the next growing season. The soil is ready, prepared, and the nutrients in the right form to grow the crop the next year. There's no loose nutrients around. I'm hoping to grow less weeds and have less competition for my crops by doing this.
home saved seed and biological dressings they're definitely the biggest bang for the buck. They've given me the biggest. They've helped me enormously. They're I just love them. They're easy to do, relatively cheap, and so far in my 3 years at it, and that's a short time, but so far I've come across no problems. They always do better than what I will buy.
Early establishment is very important. So inoculating your seed, getting good roots down. The early life of the seed is just so important to the results you see.
The importance of inoculating or giving the seed its mother's milk to enhance its development and its root development, which then gives it a better chance of survival in the soil and get itself to a healthier position and gets it working in a way that works with everything and works with the biology in the soil and works with the biology above.
Nigel, Graham and Stuart talked about the importance of inoculating your seeds. We just wanted to share a simple biological inoculant we stumbled across this year. In the picture you can see sprouted grains. I was feeding these sprouted grains to these lovely ladies. Norman and Stuart were also feeding their pigs and chickens with sprouted grains. I was up at Stuart's one day and he began telling me about a guy who was buying grains off him to sprout for his pigeons. They were talking about the virtues of sprouted grains when the guy turned to Stuart and said, "You should see my vegetables." Turns out he was putting the seed-soaked water onto his vegetables and they were jumping out of the ground. This was a light bulb moment for myself and Stuart, and so I quickly grabbed some of Stuart's seed-soaked water and put it under a microscope. As you can see, it was chock full of life, with fungi, amoeba, yeast, and a diverse range of bacteria. By simply adding water to a diverse range of seeds you have gathered during the harvest, you are gathering biology from across your farm. When you coat seeds with this biology, you are essentially giving them the keys to your farm, helping them unlock the fertility of your soil. Ideally, you would save seeds from a number of harvests in order to have seed that grew in various conditions, be it drought, wet or fine. I did a quick trial, one with treated and one untreated, and you can see on the left it definitely had a positive impact. Nigel was also doing his own trials where he got some gangway certified, dressed, undressed, and then another one he added some vermijuice, some seaweed and humic. He also tried some Planet homestead seeds with undressed and with home dressed vermijuice, humic and seaweed, and all getting some positive results. Nigel's biological seed dressing is applied as 8 litres per tonne, and it consists of 2 litres of humic, 1 litre of liquid seaweed, 2.5 litres of vermijuice, and 2.5 litres of seed-soaked water. Nigel's made up his own equipment to dress his seed. He's using a 1 tonne bag here, and he's repurposed this blue barrel, which has been fed into an auger, and we got this pipe here where our biological seed dressing is being applied. It's being gravity fed into the auger, so as the seeds travel up through the auger, they're getting coated in the biological seed dressing, and they end up back into another 1 tonne bag.
The cover crops are just they just are as important as the home saved seed. They're just the system won't work without them. So we have to as diverse as possible and just get them in. They cost money, but get them in.
I was talking to a local farmer and he's farming nearly 40 years and I was explaining what I was doing and he didn't realise or didn't understand some of the words that I've got used to talking about, like biology and mycorrhiza and things like that, and to him it was brand new. And for me it has been a case of what we've done on the plots, on plots 3 and 4, I've then migrated that out to the rest of the farm, and now it's a time that I have to migrate that out to the greater farming community and teach these simple words and simple practices and simple principles and allow them and show them the path that it's down to their responsibility, it's down to them educating themselves, it's down to them changing their mindset. And that's through workshops, through reading, through listening to other farmers who are on this path.
Help fellow farmers who are nervous of fertiliser and costs going up to make the transition to be farmers, so that farmers learn to farm their own land again. I think we've become so dependent on advisors and agronomists. We've lost the capacity or the understanding to farm and take responsibility ourselves. That's what DANÚ has given to me, is giving me back my confidence to understand what's going on in the ground. My sharing of information with all the other farmers within DANÚ has given me the confidence. It's equally given them the confidence to try stuff. And I think, yeah, definitely, if I was to sum it up, I think farmers need to learn to farm again. And yeah, I'm happy to say it in my 60s. I'm as happy as ever I was farming.
DANÚ activities are based on a discussion group format, and there's a high level of engagement from all the lads. For the 4th and 5th year of the project, invitations will be made to other farmer discussion groups to share what we're up to. And I'm going to leave the final word now to Johnny.
Knowledge is power, but I think with farming, so much of it is on instinct. And trust your gut is what we need to do.
Amazing stuff. And we're very pleased to say that Dave is joining us now. Sorry, Dave, I said that you'd be here in person. It was my mistake. Thanks for joining us. It was really interesting to see that. Actually quite moving to hear the transformation. I mean, to hear Colm there say about how it's given him back his confidence to farm. It's quite a profound change.
Yeah, you can see the change in the farmers and the passion they have for what they're doing now. You know, farming is, again, interesting and fun, and they're all excited by it. You know, there's a lot of energy. It's a great group to be involved with. It's a lot of fun every time you go onto the farm. There's a lot of crack, and yeah, no, it's really exciting.
And that thing about language, I think, is really interesting as well. You know, there is now a whole language around what it is that they're doing that, as was said there, perhaps new to other farmers. What is your plan now to kind of disseminate the learning that you've had and the teachings that you can now offer to other farmings? How will you do that?
Well, Sean has started a course there in January with Wallace and Robbie Byrne, and there'll be a few of us dipping in and out as well, sharing what we've been up to. And so that's kind of the start of it. There's going to be farm walks, obviously with COVID and everything else like that. Things we couldn't do that, but it also kind of gave us a chance. Like, it was kind of been good in a way as well. It kind of gave us a chance just to kind of bed in what we were doing and do all our own learning. Whereas now we're very happy to engage with our farming groups and invite maybe visit our discussion groups and share what we've learned, and have the farmers sharing what they've learned as well.
And in your ideal scenario, you know, obviously, especially at this time, the kind of learning and the kind of potential to roll this out across Ireland to as many farmers who want it is there. What would you like? I mean, if there were grants available, if there was a way of kind of rolling it out rapidly, is there anything that you would like that would make that easier?
I think it's back the farmers wanting it themselves. It's the mindset. There's no point, you know, if you don't want it, you're not going to do it. You can see it's up to the farmers. The farmers taking responsibility. You see Graham there talking about he's taking ownership of his farm. He's not waiting for someone else to tell him what to do. And it's the same message we have. Like, you have to take ownership of this. There's no magic formula. You have to figure out what works in your context, what works in your situation, and adapt and change. And it's always changing as you evolve. So, like, now we've got a lot of support through NOTS. You know, there's a lot of support coming through the department. They're keen. We are funded through the department. They're keen to roll out this knowledge sharing as well. And we're happy to engage with existing infrastructure as well. In, you know, the agricultural colleges and the farmer exchange and everything else like that. Really, it's back to kind of one of the big influences. You know, with a lot of members who are members of BASE would have been the BREC, and you've always said about farmers educating farmers, and that's what it's all about.
And the mention of agricultural colleges is really interesting there. You would think there's massive potential, so that as the new farmers are coming through, facing the challenges that they're going to be facing, this kind of teaching could come very useful for them.
100%, and even into ag science in secondary schools, you know, and even waking up kids, you know, in primary schools to the the beauty of soil and everything else that's in it. And it's a lot of fun. Like when you bring it alive with a microscope, you get in touch with it and you tune into the land, and you can see all the farmers are excited by it because they have another awareness of what's beneath their feet and the excitement of it. And kids can pick up on that very quickly as well. So it's kind of, if we kind of start at the grassroots, where all it starts at is at the grassroots.
And one of the things that Andrew Bergen was saying there, like he spoke about the community and we have each other's backs, would you recommend for anyone around the country who may be wanting to dip their toe towards this kind of way of farming that they make sure there is that community around them? It presumably would be quite hard to do it on your own.
100%, like having support, like so Base Ireland, like it's very much similar to like-minded farmers talking to one another and sharing their experiences. And you need that support, because you are doing something different to the neighbours, and you will get a lot of pushback at the start. But you can see now with the way fertiliser prices are going and everything like that, these farmers are in a better position to kind of ride out the storms that are coming down in the future, and especially the land is getting more and more adapted to climate change and everything else as well.
We have a question here just on the back, I suppose, of that question about the increase in fertiliser costs from Sabine, who asks, what's the end goal with the amount of artificial nitrogen that is going to be used? So she said, we heard earlier today from Christine Jones that artificial nitrogen, any amount, is detrimental. The farmers in DANÚ are still using about 80% of previous amount. So is there going to be a plan to keep reducing that, Dave, or what is the forecast?
Yeah, the farmers are reducing it. You can see, like, there we talked about having 6 units out on his trial plots, whereas previously it would have been like around 27 units per round. So he's reduced that significantly. It's all about the context as well, what each farmer, it's like DANÚ is not it's up to the individual farmer to decide what they want to do, what they're comfortable with. End of the day, they have to make a living. And as well as, like, we don't want to go, we describe it as like a methadone program for the soil. We want to wean it off the drugs, and so that it doesn't go cold turkey, and so that you can slowly do it, and at the same time you're trying to build up your soil biology so it can pick up the slack. You're not doing the damage that you are doing with the synthetic nitrogens, but it's a process that has to, you can't just kind of cut it straight away, and it's just trying to figure those out slowly so we can still produce what we want to produce.
Indeed, and I suppose, obviously every farm is different, every field and every farm is different. The psychology of that is also important to recognise, isn't it? That, it is taking a risk when you're pulling yourself off. You have to have that sense of, I suppose, peer support, confidence in what you're doing. And as we heard, I was just jotting down notes about what they were saying, the idea of working with your gut a lot more, taking back, being able to take back that control in terms of what your role as a farmer is. It's all really important. Yeah,
100%. And we always advocate, just getting your toe in there, in a small trial area first, and maybe get your your better field to give it the best chance you can get, and make all your mistakes in a small area. You're not going to go bet the whole farm, and just start educating yourself. Go, like, listening into BioFarm, doing workshops, educate yourself. That's kind of little steps, and slowly you build your confidence, and as you gain confidence and you see what's working on your farm and on your fields, start transferring it out into other fields.
And I like the idea of making mistakes away from the road. So yeah. So we have a few questions, Dave, and then Sean here and John want to talk to you. So Janine, which species of seaweed are used in the biological seed inoculant?
Just guys are getting to the liquid seaweed off the shelf, so they're just getting. You can pick lots of different ones in the market. So that's what for Nigel's biostimulant, he was just getting a liquid seaweed that you can get readily from any kind of merchant.
What's the thinking behind SAP analysis instead of Brix measurements as an indicator of soil health?
We do Brix and SAP. The SAP is like such. We want to see, because there's such clamour about it. We want to see the benefits of it, figure it all out. When to use it, how to use it. It's you can see there in the report, like, it's a lot of confusing data at the same time, but there's a lot of, you can see with Andrew's manganese that, was, if we would have applied manganese on that crop, it was in excess. And so it's trying to figure out still the timings, when to when to actually take them, and then to correlate that then with actually getting the nutrition into the plant. And like over time, we're hoping to see that we'll eventually kind of have so much data, you can kind of see a trend on your fields, and you kind of know more or less what should be on what, and so you'll be doing less and less of this analysis. But it's just at the moment we're trying to gather all that data and figure out what if we can see trends or not.
Yes. Dave asks about multi-species swords. Are they all using it, the 12 farmers? And then a really key question, which is, do different areas need different mixes, like the Cork mix versus the Leitrim mix?
Yeah, the dairy lads, not all of them are using them. A few of them are. And yeah, it mixes a lot with your soil type and land. And look, I remember yesterday to talk about, Sean mentioned today, and I think on the permanent pastures, old permanent pastures, having that diversity in the mixes, and you'd be encouraging that as well, because sometimes a lot of this diversity in the multi-species kind of the persistence is an issue. So encouraging what's already in the existing seed bank is definitely a way to go as well. Like, as much essentially whatever way you can make diversity into the field, whether it is true multi-species or encouraging natural seed bank. It's just, at the end of the day, it's all about diversity. It's all about diversity. I mean, it's what has been repeatedly said in the course of the last few days. John Brennan.
Yeah, Dave, that's a very good presentation. It's always good to hear what individuals are doing within the base and the DANÚ group, and, finding out and discovering things for themselves as well, and maybe making the odd mistake. And one thing came to mind as I was listening to this was the song by Fontaine DC, which says, talking about the boys in the better land. Could we possibly look at renaming that to the boys in the better soil? Because the land itself is not relevant in this discussion, because the land could be inert, it could be dead, and that, but it's what's happening at soil level. And the other thing that strikes me as well, as we talk about this and as we talk about the change in language, one of the lads mentioned about talking about dry matter digestibility, or DMD, but we need to add other context to that now in terms of micronutrients and so on. But is it also now not time to seriously look at an overhaul of the Green Cert with respect to including new words, new language, new thinking within that to the people who are now going to be engaging in agriculture?
Yeah, 100%, John. Like you have more experience in that background, and all this should be getting wheeled into different areas, and everyone should be exposed to this, and it's this way of thinking, because it's like we put down at the start of this project that the real success of this project would be if the farmers were actually transferring what we're doing in trial plots across the rest of their farm. We're in year 3 of a 5-year project, and they've done that, so we can say that this is, we're still figuring things out, and we'll continue to figure out, but it is working, and that knowledge should now be kind of being shared with other institutes, and definitely inside the Green Cert, that knowledge should be definitely included. In terms of the soil, we could see in Johnny's fields there, you got different soil types across in the field, and essentially getting roots into the ground, getting as much diversity of roots into the ground, really kind of open them up and keep roots continuous in it. Like Johnny knows, he'd land there. Ideally, if you could get a good rotation with more lays into it, and have not as much tillage, it would benefit the soil so much. But the economics of the situation is that that's where the return is, and that's why your soil type. It also has to tie in with your economics and the context of your farm as well. So there's not one thing to be looking at. There's loads of different contexts.
Sean.
Yeah, Dave, well done. And first of all, well done to keep Colin down to a very short camera piece, because normally he likes it. But
that's why I editing control, So
no, I actually think it's quite interesting. It's a commercial farmers, both organic and conventional, collaborating across not just agriculture, but all types of agriculture that we look at. Like the mix there is quite interesting. But I do agree. I think is the DANÚ group is going to blaze a trail for so many different people, and we've heard over the last week about the need to change the transition to low input systems, and you wonder when you sit here
why everybody isn't doing this. But the reality is, you know, there's a mindset, first of all, has to change. And like, I think that you're right in the way Danny's approached this, that it's going to take that change. And it's going to, Johnny Green talked about it during the week, about being brave. And that's going to have to be the whole thing. And, you know, but also I think what the DANÚ group is going to bring to this is as well, and sometimes I think farmers need to see this, and that's this visual knowledge of, like Nigel's, because it struck me today when Christian Jones talked about seed treatments and stuff like that, and I was going, well, how do you liquid seed it? But how do you do it? Because our machines were never set up to do that, but all of a sudden somebody's made one that'll allow seed to be treated. These are the things, this practical element of innovation that only farmers, I think, can do.
Nigel has a patent on that, Sean.
Sorry?
Nigel has a patent on that.
It's true, though, isn't it? I mean, so much experimentation, learning, support, you know, I mean, it's all there. There's a huge amount to be learned from these farmers. And, you know, clearly, I think, you know, was it Graham Harris said, you know, now I know what's best before someone else was telling me what to do. I mean, it kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
100%. Like, farmers, they're born innovators, you know, and you're putting all these problems in front of them and they'll figure it out. And like, yeah, like you can read a lot about it, and it's all great in books, but it's kind of when you get down in the field and start putting it together, you know, you just start discovering things like coming across the seeding up, and you know, simple of soaking seeds for pigs and using the wash water. You know, you now have all this biology from the whole farm gathered up, and you can put that on your seeds. And that was just kind of us cutting away and just kind of messing around, and then next thing we've got something we think, you know, it can be very powerful, because you've got your own biological stimulant from your own farm, which got basically the keys to your whole farm, and it can unlock the fertility in your soil. So and that's just true farmers doing it, like, you know. So it's a case of just doing it.
Well, Dave, thank you very much. Thanks for putting that presentation together. Thanks for editing the farmers as well. It was just brilliant to be able to hear from them. And thank you for your time and answering all the questions. And we wish you well and hope that it goes well in the next few years. But we're very grateful to you.
Thank you, Ella. And thanks, Sean. And thanks, Sean. Thanks for everyone to have us.
So we are... we're talking beef then in a few minutes, I think, with Robert Brewster. So 2-minute break and we'll be back with you with Robert.